What's up guys, it's PU here again, and today we're going to be talking about cognitive biases that you might have in Counter-Strike. A cognitive bias is a systematic error in thinking which affects our rationality. The root cause for these biases would be the brain's attempt to simplify information. These biases occasionally lead to having a distorted perspective or inaccurate judgment. Countless types of cognitive biases exist out there, but I'll discuss what I think applies to one's mentality when playing CS or tactical shooters. So essentially, cognitive biases create flaws in our mentality, and this also affects the way we approach and think about the game. You might have these biases but fail to realize them. Overcoming these cognitive biases can improve your mentality and also improve you as a player. So without any more delay, let's begin. So for the first cognitive bias, the egocentric bias, which is also called the self-centered bias. This bias causes a person to rely heavily on their viewpoint while underestimating other people's perspectives. A great example of this would be the division of credit from collaborative work. A person with an egocentric bias would overvalue his contributions while devaluing his group's contributions. So how does this connect to CS? Well, I'm sure you've heard a few people say, "I carry every game but my teammates are literal bots. Elo hell is real. I'm top fragging every game, so it's my teammates that are the problem." Those people probably have an egocentric bias. They are overvaluing their contributions just because they are at the top of the scoreboard. If they won the game, it was through their massive contributions in fragging. But if they lost, it was because of their teammates that didn't contribute enough. People that are too stats focused tend to forget team dynamics and the concept of impact. You could be getting many frags but don't realize how your teammates set you up for those. Maybe you were getting a lot of trade kills from their entry and information. Perhaps they adjusted so you can play high impact spots on CT. So even if you claim to have high average frags in games, take a moment and reflect. How many of those kills were eco frags? How many were exit kills? How many were frag hunts? How many were kills that would not have made a significant impact in the round? And how did my teammates assist me in getting those kills? Dropping that ego and having a humble approach makes you a more pleasant teammate to be around. You can also work on your flaws quicker because your ego isn't making excuses for you. So for the second cognitive bias, the hindsight bias. This bias is a common tendency for people to treat past events as something predictable or something they knew all along. How does this occur in CS? Well, hindsight bias usually happens when a player questions the decisions from past rounds without a reasonable basis. It usually begins with that player arguing against the plan during the round. "I'm not sure if you should go A guys, I don't know." Then, if that plan doesn't work, the hindsight bias kicks in. The same player would say things like, "I knew we shouldn't have gone A guys." It is so easy to point out errors when the event already happened. But you have to keep in mind that the information you have now and before the event is different. Arguing with a hindsight bias won't get you anywhere and will just cause conflicts within the team. Boasting about how your prediction was correct isn't gonna win you the game. Though it is acceptable to be critical on past rounds, you just have to convey your ideas in a constructive and concise manner. So the third cognitive bias would be the self-serving bias. It is the common habit of taking credit for positive outcomes while blaming external factors for negative ones. This bias is similar to the egocentric bias as it also discusses one's tendency to view himself in an overly favorable manner. How does this apply to CS? A person with a self-serving bias in the game will probably credit himself for good performances or games won. "I played well because I practice and I am very skilled." But if he loses or underperforms, he would blame external factors such as lag, poor hit registration, teammates, and other things. How would you overcome this bias? Well, you need a level-headed approach and learn to be critical of your own game. Instead of blaming external factors, analyze the things in your control that could have changed the game's outcome. Overcoming your self-serving bias leads to better accountability and open-mindedness towards criticism. Accepting your mistakes and fixing them is a good step towards reaching the next level. Okay, so moving on to the fourth cognitive bias, the outcome bias. It is one's tendency to justify a past decision solely by its outcome rather than the factors affecting that decision. If the decision was not sound but the result was positive, then it is justified. Likewise, a reasonable decision with a bad outcome gets labeled as a wrong decision. How does this relate to CS now? There are players out there that are accustomed to taking poor engagements and making bad plays. But since they get away with it sometimes, they justify those plays. They fail to evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of their decisions because they are only focusing on the end outcome. I made a risky play that would have lost us the round, but it worked, so why would you complain? How could you overcome this bias? Curbing this bias would require analytical thinking and seeing the bigger picture. Instead of being outcome-based, you should also consider the logic behind in-game decisions and the possible results from them. And removing this outcome bias helps us make better and more reasonable decisions in the game. So the last cognitive bias, the survivorship bias. This bias is a logical error that concentrates on people that made it past a selection process while overlooking those that did not. In highly competitive careers, like esports, people like to claim that hard work and determination alone will bring you success even if the odds are against you. They will name the successful figures that made it despite unfavorable odds. It's because of arguments like this and you see individuals try their luck on highly competitive careers even if their chances of making it is like 0.001%. Well, Twist and Stewie 2K dropped out of high school to become professional CS players. Maybe I can do that too, I'll get as good as them. Dreaming of being as good as those players is just massively unrealistic. Like, let's be real here. Especially for your average player. You shouldn't follow in their footsteps just because they made it. For every young FPL star that got signed to a team, there are probably thousands that failed to make it. They sacrificed years of their lives that they'll never get back but ended up getting nothing. It's not because they didn't work hard enough or anything. There are just some things that are not in your control. Success has a bit of luck involved, but people hate to admit that. Okay, I'm starting to ramble a lot now, but in conclusion, most of these biases negatively affect your mindset towards the game. It is crucial to overcome them to develop your critical thinking skills as a player and as a person. With all of that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you learned from my video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Alright, I'ma head out.